I am holding my pee, so if I do move around a lot, that is why. So welcome. Thankful everyone's here today, and I'm happy to be here. It's the first time actually coming out in person and presenting in 3 years, believe it or not. It's crazy. It's always behind a Zoom. So I'm excited to be here, and that is a glass of bourbon. So let's rock and roll. So mash bill today's session. So who the bourbon drinkers know what I did there. You see that? I put mash bill, right? That means the makeup of bourbon. I actually got into the bourbon not too long ago, so I'm excited today for this. So basically, I guess I should stand over here because I can't really look at anything. So we're going to talk a little bit about an intro of myself, which will be super quick because I already started late. I'm going to throw a little bourbon facts in here so we all can kind of learn a little bit about bourbon because we have an expert coming, so I figured I'd just make it a little fun there. We'll talk about session recording use cases. So where does it make sense in the environment? We'll talk about entitlements. We'll look at the architecture a little bit. Deployment considerations, when you actually have to go to deployment in your environments, you guys can understand what's going on. We'll address compliance. It's a big question that we get out there in the field is, that's great, you're recording my screen, but what about, people with, HIPAA data or PCI data? How does that not get in the recording? And then we'll do a Q&A, which will be the roundtable, because there's not going to be no time from Q&A because I'm already starting late. I do talk fast, so if I'm talking too fast, I'll try to slow it down by like 0.2 because I'm already starting late. So this is me, Shane Kleinert, Senior Solutions Architect for Choice Solutions. We're a Citrix partner out of KC. I started the Southeast region like 8 years ago, believe it or not. I lead the EUC practice, Citrix CTP, Solutions Architect, and it's the first time I actually have hobbies in this slide. That's one of the things, I guess, the pandemic, you develop hobbies. So I like cooking now, which is a big deal. Got into eggs, the bourbon stuff, and whiskey, and sports, believe it or not. I was never a sports fan. I'm actually watch sports, which is pretty cool. And then obviously all the streaming platforms. We won't talk about that because we got to get rocking and rolling. So 5 rules of bourbon real quick. Does anybody know any of them? Want to shoot them out? Anybody? What? 51% corn. Very good. That's not the first one, but that is good. So must be made in the United States. Anyone know that? I sure as heck didn't know that until just recently, like last night. Aged in a charred new oak barrel, so remember that because we'll be asked on that. 51% corn, which we talked about. Barrel cannot be higher than 125 proof and has to be water. And obviously, it's government regulated too, which I did not know that. And all bourbons are whiskey, but not all whiskeys are bourbon. All right, anyways, so more information throughout the session. So why this session? So first thing was, like I said, the pandemic, I was kind of a hermit, and I really didn't get out anywhere. So I went to the CUGC XL, which took a lot of balls to get there, to be honest, because I did not want to jump on a plane. So I did it, and then I saw Jennifer and Patrick, everyone was out there, and I just really got excited about kind of getting some energy and coming out and presenting again. So that was the first thing. Also, there's a huge uptick in work from home, which you all have seen, obviously, through the whole pandemic. But what's coming from that is requests from admins and consultants and C-levels. How do we record what the user is doing? How do we know that they're actually working? And that's a whole different methodology around and about productivity, right? Are they working? Should I care what they're doing, or is it all about output, right? That's a whole conversation around that in general. But that was a big reason. And really, do you trust your employee or not? Huge enhancements around session recording. Absolutely huge enhancements over the last couple of years. Really excited about what they've done. I gave them a lot of feedback. They actually built that feedback into the product, which is exciting. They got an incredible team. Entitlement updates, as Patrick was alluding to before, really cool stuff. A lot of you in the room probably already own it and don't know it. There's been some updates in April, so we'll talk about that. And the idea why this session was really I want to build something and build a session. Right, so something that you guys already have, something that you already own. Let's try to get it out there in the field. It's no longer your great grandmother's smart auditor product from 1987. Huge enhancements. This was the KCXL, kind of kicking it there, Jarian and Oz. And let's get going. Is this cutting in and out? Is that what's happening here? Hello. All right. You guys heard of the big announcements, obviously, cloud.com, breaking into different business units. So I don't know if you saw the other 2 announcements. They had 2 open spots. Dazzle's back. See how that joke hit? Nice. And Smart Auditor. Someone take a screen. Don't put that out there. I might get sued. They're serious. The new company's serious. I don't know. All right, so let's get into it. So get serious now. So what are the use cases for Citrix Session Recording? So first use case is user support and training. Makes sense, right? We're recording trust but verify. How many times did users call up in the environment and they're like, hey, this is what happened, and then you go down the road of believing what they say, and it's usually 2 things different than what they said, right? So trust but verify app crashes is really awesome, right? So there's an ability to actually look for those specific processes, detect those app crashes, and do a pre-recording prior to that, which is really awesome. And then training, call centers, this is huge, 10 minutes. I only have 10 minutes left? Get out of here. Wait, how do I only have 10 minutes? Didn't I just get up here? Isn't it so? Wait a sec. Is it really only 10 minutes left? Oh, wait. Wasn't it 45 minutes? There can't be 10 minutes left. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's like 45 minutes. All right. Sorry. Wow. There's a lot of content here. So, all right. Well, we'll keep. So capturing malicious behavior, movement in the environment. There's trigger-based recording, so USB file redirection, app start, website URLs. These are all things that didn't exist before. Someone does word redirection, things like that. That's all can be detected and actually in the. This is going to be for the video, though. It's important, so I use the microphone. Hook into security analytics, forensics, so not just capturing it when it happens, but how do you go look at it after the incident happened? So that's all part of this as well. You can also now, a new feature we requested from a large insurance company, they built it in within less than 3 months. You can actually do restrictive coding. So if you're someone on the forensics team, you can check a recording and it'll actually hide it from everyone else in the organization because it's considered under investigation and there's specific delegation around that. Productivity insights, they're starting to get into this now, so it's really not just a security tool, it's more of an operations tool as well. You can start to see how long they've been active on each of these individual applications. Yeah, I had a question in here, but if I'm late on time, does anyone know who championed the Bottled and Bond Act? Anybody? E.H. Taylor there, Jr. Anyone? Okay, let's get going with it. Okay, so entitlements. If you get anything out of this session, it's important to know that you probably already own the product, right? So on-prem, from an on-prem perspective, it's Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops Premium. 2209 release is when it started. When it got included there, you're not entitled to the service. If you scan that QR code, it's a session we did on the whole entitlements. If you're interested, it's like a 1 hour about all the new updates. There's been a ton of enhancements that Citrix has brought into the product that used to be premium features for DAS customers, so Standard Plus. So if you're a Standard Plus customer, you run Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service, became DAS in April. If you're a DAS Standard customer, you now have access to Citrix Session Recording as well as Citrix WEM, which are huge, huge, huge value adds. Can't stress that enough. And the actual back port of the service as well for 1912 TSR folks. Session recording architecture. So let's get into the architecture here. So storage insights, okay? So basically, first thing to understand is, and this is always the question that's asked when we're out at customers, is like how much data is it going to take? Storing videos takes a lot of capacity, right? Well, so they really designed this solution to be super storage efficient, right? So basically, it's very small files, and in most cases, it's 10x less than a traditional video format, because Citrix knows the native ICA stream format, right? So basically, they're seeing that, they're grabbing that, and they're able to do that intelligently and essentially look at the virtual channels and not do recording for things like, for instance, if you're doing H.264 video, you're doing active changing regions, it's redirecting it down to the client. We don't need that inside of the video. We don't need printing data and stuff like that inside of the video, so it keeps the files really small and really short. Small and short. Small capacity, yeah. So yeah, much less efficient than like I had said there. If you are doing H.264 inside of the actual session for active changing regions, and you want to keep it smaller, you can run that registry key there. Drop H.264 enable to 1, and essentially it'll make it so it blocks out the video. So, and that's one thing to know too. If you're doing session recording, you're doing browser content redirection, for instance, that data is not going to be in the recording because it's obviously redirected down to the client, right? So it'll look the same. It'll just be black. So how it basically does, there's new capacity planning reports, which you see on the right. That's another thing, how much capacity you want to use. These are proactive reports that are now built into the service. It's really the way it does it. It's a store and forward message queuing. Microsoft message queuing is how it basically does it. So you have a session recording agent. There's the MSM queue essentially on the agent itself, on the VDA, and there's the messaging server service on the server. And it basically communicates back and forth. And the nice thing about that kind of store and forward type technology is if your session recording server does go down, you basically can have, by default, it's 7,200 seconds, which is basically 2 hours of time that the VDA can still run. It queues that recording locally. As soon as the session recording server comes back online, it brings it back, and you don't lose any data in that recording. This is basically the recording, the reports that are there. So what does the actual architecture look like? So basically, on the left-hand side is on-prem on a non-HA, and then the HA is on the right. So basically, if we look, you have basically a database. So on-prem, it's SQL. If you're in an IaaS type solution, you're running in a public cloud, you can basically use AWS RDS. You can use Azure, Microsoft Azure SQL, or traditional SQL as well. You can set that up in HA. On the actual session recording server itself, there's essentially an admin console. There's a policy engine. There's the queuing service that's part of that. There's IIS for basically the web player. And then you can basically store your recordings on either a local disk or a shared repository. On the actual VDA itself, there's a session recording agent, and then part of that agent, it uses the Microsoft a message queue essentially to send that data back. So from a high availability perspective, you need obviously more, or from a scalability standpoint, you need more than one session recording server. So in most cases, in medium scale environments, you essentially would need, what you would need to do that is you need a load balance VIP in front of that. So that could be an F5 or a Citrix NetScaler back, baby, huh? How about that? NetScaler. Basically, and you basically can, there's specific ports which we'll talk about that you need a load balance, and you have a share, an SMB share, where you'll basically store those recordings. Then they'll all have access to it. In the very large scale environments, which we'll talk about, there have been some folks out there that have thought of different ways to basically, because SMB starts to cause some challenges, and there's different ways around that. So basically, the on-prem architecture looks like that. So a little bit of highlights there. If you're interested in actually doing this, there's some QR codes throughout the slide, basically, but here you can scan that, and it'll actually give you the load balancing guide from Citrix. So basically, with the load balancer itself, you basically set it to least bandwidth per packet. Those are the ports that are used. The different ports depend on if you're using WebSockets 1 or 2. One of the things that's just buried in the docs that you'll figure out, and I'm just saving you time here, is if you're doing an upgrade and you've been upgrading your environment, it's going to stay on WebSocket 1. So you have to basically run this command here to put you to WebSockets 2, which then can make it so it's all on 443 essentially, versus having the additional port 22334. So basically went from Python to IIS. You have to set the key in the registry on each session recording server to enable LB to 1, and then you basically can, if you want to have the message queuing service off TCP over to HTTPS, you can run a command to essentially do that. The storage share, which I said, needs to be HA. An SMB share. There have been some folks out there, Ryan Revert and Hal, they did a CUGC article on really scaling this 20,000 users plus. I haven't done an environment of that size, so they're obviously re-engineering stuff, and they're looking at different ways. And they did what they called the local loopback, which essentially was basically local shares, local repositories, and essentially doing like junction points, so each of the servers can see it, but it all runs local. So that's something I'm talking to the PM about, trying to get that for larger customers. To reflect what they've been doing, which is pretty cool, and talked about already. So let's get into the session recording. Man, this thing keeps cutting out. Can you guys hear me okay back there? It sucks for the person going to be watching the recording, because they're going to get it's going to be cutting in and out. But basically, the session recording service essentially came out. Am I doing something? Oh, sorry, man. I got like a kung fu grip here on the mic. So basically the session recording service is really awesome. So essentially, just like they're doing with everything with the service or creating microservices, they created the session recording server, and essentially they started peeling it off to make a microservice inside of the DAS service. So basically what they've done is they've taken your admin and policy console and the player. It's all part of the DAS service now. And basically you have what's on the on-prem environment. If you can see, everything looks the same essentially, but now you have a session recording agent that goes on your session recording server. Today it's in tech preview still, but there's in the tech preview there's outbound ports that aren't 443, so large enterprises are going to be like, what the F. So that by GA that should be resolved, but right now there's a couple extra ports that you need to open, and it's the same, and that's it. It's just an outbound connection, and then what's really cool is it just consolidated your environment. So what you still have on-prem is you still have the session recording servers, and you have your database. So your data is still local, but the control plane is in the cloud, which is really nice. What's really nice about that is if you have a I don't know if this thing has a laser pointer or not, but if you have a multi-site environment, it sucks from session recording today is because you have to be in different consoles to look at everything. Now it's all aggregated under a single platform. So you can go into the web player and you can actually see all your different environments in a different site. So it's really, really powerful, and those are the pieces of the pie there. So I'm kind of talking ahead just because I obviously know the content. I know we're short on time. So basically, session recording requirements. So if you want to get into the service, there's specific requirements. Just like all the cloud services, there's URLs that you need to whitelist and things like that. So you want to, if you can scan that code, that'll take you what you need to get to. See if I missed anything here that's important. Like I said, data stays local. That's key. A lot of folks are worried about their, especially session recording data. I mean, you're recording the user session. You want to make sure that that's stored in-house. Yeah, I talked about that. The event visualization is really nice too. So it actually will visualize all these actions or events that happen inside of that recording. So for instance, clipboard redirection, file system changes, URLs. What URLs do they go? These are all events that get triggered across the recording, and now it will visualize it and actually show you in a really nice format. And there's also really extensive search capabilities that are part of the service as well. I'm not going to talk through all this here, but basically, long story short, is on the Azure side, they now support Azure SQL, which I talked about, Microsoft Azure Files from a data store standpoint. And there's actually a guide, which I didn't put the link here, but I can give it if anyone's interested, that Citrix actually started doing load testing on Azure Files to actually get that sizing information out there to the public. I was just showing session recording servers. You have your Citrix ADCs, or you can use native Azure load balancer application gateway inside of the Azure paths as well. Deployment considerations, we already know 51%. Yeah. Okay, so deployment considerations. This gets into the good stuff here. So basically, first thing that we're going to be talking about is the master image. You know, things you have to consider. Is there any questions? I'm all messed up with the whole time situation here. I think I got 20 minutes. So if there's questions, let me know. And sorry, I'm speeding through this here. So basically, we are going to talk about the master image. We're going to be talking about session recording, build, and HA capabilities, which some of that I talked through. Storage considerations, both performance and capacity, and then policy management. And we'll talk about admin and operational aspects. So the first thing is from an administrative perspective, just like all the Citrix products, there's a tech zone article with the AV exclusions. Make sure you go there. Look at the AV exclusions for the player, for the agent, as well as the server. If you're using Citrix Web Intelligent CPU optimization, make sure to exclude the session recording agent because it will intelligently go and say, clamp that CPU down, and then you have some challenges there. I can tell you, working with Calabrio and some of the other solutions out there, they're taking 8 to 10+% CPU. I mean, this thing stays below 3% in some of the environments I've been in. So it's really, really optimized. Maintenance of storage from an archiving perspective is possible now, so that's something that wasn't there before. It can actually delete and archive those recordings. There's a new role I talked about for privilege viewing. Administrative logging can also be enabled and configured, as well as the admin console, which I'm going to walk through on what that looks like. So let's actually kind of look at it from a visualization perspective. So as we mentioned, Citrix DAS, everything's a microservice, but this is actually nested in the desktops as a service microservice. So we go in there. Say that 10 times fast. Once we go in here, we'll actually go in. It's always fun to talk over the videos after you play them because then you don't remember where you clicked, right? But basically, we're going to go up to the top, and we're going to click, go into the session recording microservice. And so there's a little wizard here that basically what it does is it basically walks you through the process, and it'll say if you don't have a session recording agent, download it, put it on your session recording server. It does the outbound connection. It realizes it's there. It'll actually walk you through the configuration to set up all the configuration settings you would set up on that server, like recording locations, et cetera. So looking into the console, you'll see all your recordings here. You're going to see the recording server it was on, the duration of the video, what site. If you had multiple sites, you'd see those sites over here to the top right. You'll be able to search, right? So this is intelligent search. So you can actually look at things like client IP address, delivery group name, URL that they ran, duration of the video, host name, et cetera. Comments. So you can actually go through as an admin or an operation person, and as you find things that you don't like in the videos, you can put comments, and other folks can go and see those comments and jump directly to those videos. There's a whole policy engine. This is the configuration I had talked about. The policy engine we're going to walk through separate, but there's recording policies, event detection policies, and event response policies, and we'll talk through all those in a few minutes here. Yep, so basically there's configuration logging. I don't think I had set it up before I recorded this, but on the server management, this is where you'd have your site. You can see I have one server here. It's just doing for the test here. But this is the settings you'd set on your session recording server that are all now managed. So think about that. If you had 10+ servers in your environment, multiple sites, now it's all managed centrally. But this is a really big feature for Citrix to be able to offload this. So you'll be able to do your recording locations. You'll be able to sign and encrypt those recordings. That's all done through here. Playback settings as well. And then obviously if you can turn on your logging, enable logging as well as the telemetry data for them. Okay, yeah, so that's that. I'll go to the next slide there. So at least you got a little bit of the admin experience. We're gonna, the on-prem console, I'm going to click through this quick because it's like we just took a trip back 25 years, right? So if we go ahead and look at this, this is what the on-prem admin console. Is anyone running the session recording service today? Oh, cool. All right, nice. All right. So you're used to the good console then. How's that working for you? All right, that's good to hear. Yeah, so this is what the old console looks like. Not too attractive, right? Same functionality, but it's just not, doesn't have that snappiness look and feel. So I don't have to go through all that. Okay, so video playback. You know, what does the playback functionality look like? So when you come in here and actually go to play a video, you'll actually get your recorder on the right. You're going to see all your events. So in this case, I turned it all on just for fun. So every time I open a window, I'm going to see the process that's open. This is the event visualization. You can see topmost window, web browsing, the URLs that I went to, session pause and resume, which will show you that functionality. Clipboard redirection. If someone copies and pastes stuff out of the session, you'll be able to see that. If they're copying files, you'll be able to see that as well. And if you click on each of these trigger points, it actually takes you to that point in the video. I clicked on Google, and there I am typing in Google. There were some other websites I went to, but I didn't put those in the video. If you click social security number, you can see here content blocked. We'll talk about that a little bit later. How'd that happen? Magic. So it's pretty nice. You can come in here also from the recording perspective, and this is like night and day from the on-prem recorder. I think somewhere in here I have the on-prem recorder. This is an awesome operation. This was one of my feedback that made it into the product. Is basically you can now get performance overlay. So in every single video, you're going to get round trip time, which is huge, memory, CPU, and disk utilization, sorry, CPU, memory, and round trip time. So when that user calls and they said, I'm having a crappy experience, you can actually go back to the recording and look at their RTT time, right? Which is something you could technically do, with performance analytics or control up and all these things, but it's nice to see it at the exact timestamp in the video. And that's now in the product as well. So that's part of the things that really turned it not just from a security tool into an operations tool. So you can see here, some of the videos here from a commons perspective. I said social security number detected. We put that in there. We'll take a look at the restricted recordings. If you can click a recording and say, hey, restrict this. This is a new feature that one of our clients had recommended. They're a big insurance company where they only had the product specifically for forensics, and the other team couldn't take advantage of it because they wanted to make it so they couldn't see the recordings. So now the forensics team can only see, they can flag those recordings, and only the forensic people will see that it's under investigation. That's a huge feature, which now is in the product. And what's awesome is this new team is really listening to the feedback. There's 3 or 4 features that I had built in. So if you guys if you're using the product and you have features, definitely pull me aside. Let's talk about it, and we'll get it. We'll make sure it gets built into the product. Master image deployment consideration. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of the UI for the folks that haven't used it before and kind of see that this thing is pretty powerful and you already own it, right? So the agent gets added to the master image. There's the message queuing ID needs to be generalized, right? If you're doing a non-persistent image, so there's a script that they give you can put at startup. If you use the base image framework for resealing, it's already done. If you're not using the base image framework for resealing, Google the base image framework. BISF, it's awesome. It's a community-based project where they basically have a bunch of scripts and optimizations that everyone does to their images, and it's all done in a nice organized fashion in a GPO, and you can add your own custom scripts. It's BIS-F if you want to Google that. I should have put a QR code. You can tune that timeout. Today it's 2 hours. If you wanted to say if my session recording server's down, I want to queue up that data more, you can do that. Third-party integrations for pause and resume. That was one of our features that got added, which I'm really excited about. That requires a checkbox to be enabled to enable automated pause and resume. And then if you want to manage these registry keys, you can actually, this is what it looks like on the agent properties, so change that setting. Third-party integration, you want to check that. And then you'll have to actually set the permissions to basically say, these are the users I want to be able to pause and resume. Because it's doing it in the user context, they're basically sending an API command. The thing is, today it's manual, right? So what we did is, we partnered with Automate, which they're here in the back. They do robotic process automation. And essentially, they can, as a bot, there's a purpose-built bot that will detect the social security number fields and all the different fields, and it'll just pause and resume it when it comes and goes. It's really cool stuff. But you can do that all built in, and this is the keys if you want to manage these keys via the registry. So from an HA perspective, understand the resilient storage requirements across the whole stack, which is important. You want a recording server co-located to the database. You can use Azure SQL. It doesn't mean you should use it and have your session recording, right? You want to just the cardinal rule, right? Apps and data connected, right? Multi-site consideration, definitely look at the service. I talked about that with the recording already. If you're doing load balancing, you can basically localize with group policy preference, basically kind of queue those up and kind of have like a pod-based architecture, those registry keys that I showed. So each site is looking at the local servers and the VIP associated. That QR code takes you to the scale article that they have.
You got to be rabbit it. Remember?
Am I doing it again? I'm sorry. God, man, I just got to really grab this thing. Okay. Yes, so here we go. Okay, so storage performance considerations. So on the storage performance side of things, it's very I/O intensive and not so much CPU and memory, right? You can have, the gentleman that I mentioned earlier, they have 20,000 users. They're on, I think it's four CPUs, or was it 8? I think it was 4 CPUs, and I think it was 32 gigs of RAM. But it's not. It's all about I/O, right? Because it's all writes happening. So that's really important. Capacity-wise, the recording is based on use cases, so you want to start getting a couple of those recordings, because every recording can be different based on what you're doing from an ICA perspective, right? If you're doing high-intense 3D graphics, it's going to be a little bit larger files versus someone that's just doing task-based work, right? It depends on the graphics mode, the color depth, screen resolution, etc. The queuing capacity on the messaging service, on the VDA and on the server can be adjusted, because maybe you want to, if you're a large environment, you're going to want to adjust that. On the server side, I think it's a gig by default. Just some things to consider there. This is what it looks like here. Let's edit that. So recording policy, from a recording policy management perspective, you have basically recording policies, but you have one policy and multiple rules per organization. And I'll basically say, you have a policy set up, and you can say these people you want to record or not record based on these individual use cases, event detection and response policies. Let's take a look at the policy engine. This is where the magic happens right here. So hopefully you're getting excited. I feel the excitement in the room. All right, thank you. All right, so on the recording policy side, like I mentioned, it's one single policy. So we basically come in here, and we can actually go and come in here and edit the policy, and you can basically look and see that we can. In my case, because it was allow, I just said, hey, record for everyone, right? That's pretty easy. But you can actually edit that and just show you can you can add different rules here, and the rules have different per application, per delivery group, or per endpoint address range. You can say record or don't record. Which is pretty powerful in the organization, because there might be some VIPs where you don't want to record their sessions, or they're not going to want their sessions recorded. Maybe you only want to record, for instance, certain applications. That can all be done through this engine as well. So what I showed here is the CUGC XL policy. Is you can basically come in, again, policy, multiple rules. So you go create that policy. Now you can come in here, and I could say, if I go into this XL policy, I just showed them all because I thought that'd be best for you guys to kind of see what the capabilities are. So basically coming in here, if we go edit the rule for CUGS, I spelt that wrong. Or maybe that's a new name that wasn't announced yet. So if you go look over here on the right, these are all those triggers that I talked about, right? So when an app starts, when clipboard operations happen, sensitive file events, are there files that you don't want changed? If any of those things happen, topmost window activity, client drive mapping, right? So if you're sending files on and up the client drive virtual channel, USB redirection events, someone plugs in a USB drive, web browsing activities, performance data, RDP connections, all that stuff can trigger recording. So it's not just record the whole session like it used to be. This is stuff that some of that's been marketed, but I feel like it's just like for the value that you have in this product that you own, a lot of people don't know that this stuff exists. So hopefully that's really the whole intent of this session, that you walk away at least like, hey, this product's pretty cool and I own it, right? This is pretty cool. This is the pre-record policies. You can actually look, and if there's specific apps that are crashing, you can say, you know what, I don't want to record anything, but what I do want to record, so it always records, but it only keeps 2 minutes. And you can set the pre-record time. So when that app actually crashes, it'll go and grab the 2 minutes prior to that, which is actually pretty powerful. So you can actually see when this actual application fails, why did it fail? How many times do users call up and like, this is why, this specific Teams doesn't work, or whatever it is. You can actually go in and see the recording. Which is really powerful. So on the event triggers, you can actually see, this is on the app name, but if you look at the event type, all the event types that we have here have individual triggers. For instance, if I went to, I think I do in the recording, performance data, you can say if my CPU goes over 90%, start recording. I mean, that stuff's great, because if you, again, some organizations are like, I don't want to record the whole session. Well, you could say, well, you don't have to. We can have triggers. So another good example would be, for instance, which I think I'm going to show here, is on the URL side of things. Maybe if they go to certain websites, or there's specific applications that are banking apps that you want to make sure are recorded, or call center apps, you can actually call all those out. I would have fast-forwarded the video by now, but I got this thing here I don't want to mess up. But that's basically the last thing there. So any questions on kind of the event policies or anything? Okay, cool. Don't worry, there's only another 45 slides. You didn't know this was an all-day boot camp, did you? Yeah, I think I'm good. A couple minutes left here. So yeah, we'll just keep going. So basically on the deployment, we're almost done here. So on the operations side of things, like I'd mentioned from a recording, this used to be something you'd have to do manually. Now it's actually built into the service to handle the automatic deletion and archiving, which is pretty cool. And there's actually metrics that they have which are pretty decent to actually go from a perfmon perspective to help size and scale. If you scan that QR code, I think the deck's going to be shared too. And I think there's a video recording. It probably doesn't have me in it because it's looking right at the stage, so there's just a ghost giving the session. And those are some of the metrics that we had talked about there. So session recording compliance, this kind of gets into the good stuff, right? Like, you're talking about, for instance, like I can record everything, but how do I stay compliant, right? There was a question there, but won't worry about that. So all recordings are encrypted in transit and can be at rest as well. This is something that is interesting. You can take that recording file, you can't open it unless you're actually using the player. The player is the only thing that can decrypt it. Which is a nice added value add there. Pause and resume capabilities are absolutely huge for customers now. You can pause and resume that. It used to be stop and start, and that basically created multiple recordings. Now pause and resume basically blanks it out. Okay? 3 different types of data types collected for the service, logs, configuration, retained for 90 days at the cloud service side of things, and all statistics are stored on the Citrix side on the back end for 90 days. But again, it's policy information. It's nothing to do with your customers or your end users or your specific recordings. So we'll talk for a minute about the pause and resume capability because I think that's pretty awesome. So we'll actually show it. So I'm not going to walk through this. So we'll actually show it. I got the recording here. This is on the. I didn't get a chance to show this, but security analytics actually has a tie-in with session recording. So if there's an event that happens from a security perspective, it can actually, one of the triggers is trigger recording, which is pretty neat. So let's go ahead and take a look at the pause and resume capability. So basically, this is me, working as a new patient and going in and clicking Add Patient here. So when I go ahead and do Add Patient, I'm just going to flip over to the screen behind it, which is this is the old legacy recording. You can see how Mickey Mouse it looks. But you can see right here, it essentially blocks it. And that's really 5 minutes. All right, yeah, 15 minutes. But now I rushed through the whole presentation. Now I have 15 minutes doing, what's happening? You guys are messing with me today. I have to dance up here for 10 minutes. Now I'm going to slow it down. So what we have here is the session recording console. So you can see once I removed the window, it basically resumed the recording, which this is really, really just honestly paramount. I'm surprised. This has been out, so we got this feature built in almost a year and a half ago, and I'm surprised. Has anyone knew about the intelligent pause and resume that has session recording? All right. So yeah, they got to do more. Well, we do have a blog coming, actually, Citrix Ready blog. I'm helping them write that they're going to have this, and it's going to be basically talked about because it's such an awesome technology. So what Automate did, which they're here today, essentially what they did is they basically created a purpose-built bot. They do full RPA, so we just created a bot that basically all it does is look for a specific image, and then we'll do a pause and resume. And then they basically built, which is pretty nice, a wizard, right? Because instead of having someone to have to go and grab the scenario builder and go build all these scenarios, they built a custom wizard, which essentially looks like this, right? You basically start up this nanobot wizard, and you basically go and so this would be someone that knows nothing about RPA or automation or the product can just come in here, name the project, in this case, patient data. And what this basically does here is it'll basically essentially, this is just a tool to basically capture the individual fields that are required for the script, right? It's just a nice fancy tool because without this, they need to download the scenario builder and people just kind of get overwhelmed, right? So this is a nice way to do that. Excuse my mistypes there. This actually works. Technically, this will work in any recording. So if someone was using Calabrio call recording, for instance, in the room and you had physical endpoints, you can use this on the physical endpoints as well. But that's why there's 2 options because the pause and resume commands are different between the products. So once you go to do this, you go ahead and pick an application name. So in this case, I'll just call it patient data. And basically what it does in the next step here is it'll allow you just to kind of capture those important fields. So if in some cases you have multiple apps, you can go in and just kind of capture the fields of those apps. So whether it's social security number or it's a credit card field. So this all kind of, just give a little background on this whole thing. You look here, I'll give it a second. Just go ahead and just simply capture it over the field. So in this case, I put the social security number field. And when you go ahead and click capture, just save it, and then what it does, it just saves it to the actual tool with a JSON metadata file. So it has the information about like the process. It doesn't just look at the image; it looks at the process and the window title as well, just to make it more efficient. So now you can see it grabbed the image, and it's got the information here about the window title and process name. And then we just go ahead and click next. It'll see the application and the project, and we just finalize it. And essentially, what that did is it exports a script. And then the agent, the nanobot has an agent that runs in your VDA, and it just kind of sits there in loops, and it's optimized, and it just looks for those individual screens, and it'll go ahead and do its thing. So any questions on the automated pause and resume? Okay, cool. So really, really neat. Again, just powerful feature that was built in. So another piece that was added from a compliance perspective was the restricted viewing, which we talked about, but the rights for the authorization console, which used to be on-prem, now is in the identity and access management portion of the DAS console. So that's what that looks like. And then value add summary. I'll slow this down because I have 15 minutes. No, that's fine. It's probably better to give the time back because I guess I took too long to get the setup here. So basically, just to kind of recap, and we can go back if there's questions now we have time. So basically, first thing is the ability for users to use this for basically QA, troubleshooting, forensics analysis, security tools, and things like that, which we had talked about. Granular policy control engine, right? It's not just recording the whole session, which we had talked about. Hybrid architecture for, now it's a DAS service and tech preview. We talked about the multi-site capabilities. That's all part of the service, so this is a highly scalable system. Pause and resume capabilities, event triggers for clipboard, USB, URL redirection, session overlay we talked about from a performance standpoint. We talked about, file transfers and VDA registry. Those are all the triggers we talked about. We talked about the pre-recording, configuration logging, and then the last piece was security analytics integration. So Q&A, that's it. Man, I got all jacked up with this whole time thing. I apologize. I rushed through the whole thing here. So it was you. You're the guy I got to look. Okay, we're going to have a conversation later. No, it's all right.
I've got another microphone. Throw your hand up. I'll come over and we'll do a Q&A session with Shane. Shane, well done, man. Yeah, well, easy.
Yes.
So the intelligent pause and resume, you were showing it with Automate. Is it built into the product, or do you need like that third party to capture those events to do the pause and resume?
Yeah, so no. So two things with that. So the capability to do the pause and resume was built in. That was so what happened was how this all kind of came about was we're working with a large airline, and I was working with them. They're using Calabrio call recording with Citrix, and they went to roll this whole thing out, and then the PCI department came down and like, you have credit card data in the recording. Like, the project's dead. So they had Automate for load testing. We're load testing, I think it was like 2,000 users. We're doing all this load testing, and they're like, we're talking about the bot and everything, and they're like, well, can we just potentially automate this? I'm like, well, yeah, wait a second. So we called Sam up, and we're like, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing. So he built a kind of a purpose-built bot to basically do that. So that's great. We got it working for Calabrio. Now we're like, well, why can't we do this with Citrix Session Recording? So we called up the PM and said, hey, this is what we're doing in Calabrio. Can you build this into the product? You have stop and start. The problem there is that gives you multiple recordings, pause and resume, and literally within 3 months it was built into the product. So now what that does, so without that product, if you wanted to build your own automation, technically you have to go build some script. It's essentially just a PowerShell module that gets imported into the VDA, and it just issues a command that basically, the parameter for it is basically, pause with the app name and the reason why it paused. So in that case, in the video, I said, session recording detected, or social security number detected, and here's why we paused. But what's cool about using a bot that has visual detection is you can pass variables. So now you can know, was it a credit card field? Was it a social security number field? Pass that to the recording, and then it'll basically black it out the way you want it. So yeah, so that part's built into the product, and it requires on the VDA side, it requires enable third-party integrations and those permissions. And that's in the doc, like it walks through it. It's just the third-party piece, which there is the Automate for the bot. And it's purpose-built, and it's low cost, too, because it's really designed for one specific use case. But hopefully that answers your question there.
Maybe to build off of that, we use Twilio for our communications.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to trigger off of like when a call is made or call is in or out?
Yeah, so great question, and that's actually something I've been talking to the PM about, and also Sridhar as well at the last CUGC. We have a lot of large-scale call centers that basically want this is an amazing product with the likes of like nice call recording and some of the other ones out there. The challenge is it doesn't do audio today, right? There's no audio at all. So it's something that potentially it's being kind of looked at a high level. But from your case, it would be like when a Twilio call comes in, does a window pop up? Are you looking to get the recording for audio or just the visual capabilities?
It would be both, but even on the triggering on because it's web-based.
Yeah.
So triggering on a call or incoming or outgoing.
Yeah, so right now it's URL driven, so you could potentially say this window of the browser and this URL, go ahead and start the recording, but you wouldn't be able to capture the audio though today. That's something they're looking at, though. I've been bringing that feedback up because I really think they can compete heavily against some of the other solutions out there in the market for the whole call capabilities. Yeah, good question. All right. Is anybody, so from this presentation, is anyone interested in actually, so who's a DAS customer in here? Citrix DAS, really? Everyone's still rocking the on-prem release? Okay. Yeah. So is that, I'm just curious actually, because that's actually, I think with some of the changes, you can see potentially some investment coming back, to the on-prem stuff, as you see with some of these announcements and stuff. Is the reason rid of the DAS service? Is it just, comfort level, or is it more so that, the cost? I'm just curious on the cost. All right, so Citrix got to lower the price of the product, is what we're saying. Now, what does that? Do you see value in kind of Citrix always continuously updating the back-end framework, or you guys basically as admins say, well, we do that anyways. We don't need Citrix to do that. I'm just curious. You got to hold it up here. I'm an expert at it now.
No.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
For us, a lot of it's around cost. We are trying to convince, the higher ups to the pros and
5-minute
cons.
warning.
Unfortunately, with us being a government, they're trying to force us to FedRAMP, which doesn't come with a lot of those bells and whistles that kind of take away the pros. But I think we're getting close to the cost part, but that's the big part.
Yeah, I don't think session recording service, maybe Joe's could tell me or not, but I don't think it's on the GovCloud yet, I don't think. But that's something that potentially could be. But you could still use the session recording service. But the DAS in general, there is government enabled, but not on the session recording service. They kind of get those enabled through the microservice.
Yeah, we were trying to POC session recording, but Calabrio beat out because of the audio and able to trigger off of the
Telling you, man, Citrix is, there's a big market potential, man. I think it's NICE is what I'm thinking. NICE is the big one, right? Is that the one I'm thinking? I worked with a massive call center, like 40,000 users. We did this whole proof of concept, Windows 10 multi-test, all this stuff. And using, I think it was NICE call recording, if I remember. This thing looked like it was built in 1970. They pay millions of dollars a year. Literally, a guy that worked there for 10 years now works for this company. He's like, they know they just make tons of money, and all the big capital, all these big companies use it, and they don't update the product because the companies are paying. And Citrix has this amazing product. They just added audio capabilities. They can instantly get all these customers. So just listen to that. I'm telling you, it's good stuff, man. But yeah, so yeah, and that's why Calabrio will win every time because of the audio capability. Yep. Okay, cool. Any other questions? If not, we'll give you 5 minutes back to the day. If you have any other questions through the course, I'll be here all day. We can definitely chat. So thank you for listening. Sorry for a little bit of the speed session, but we'll also, the recordings and stuff. And yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.